Hey everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Into the Rift podcast, a Riftbound TCG podcast hosted by myself, Alex Coccia, and of course, my good friend, Mr. Joe Curley, best of Timo Bologna. Look at that Timo hat, buddy. I can't get enough of it. And I actually told you when I was at the Riftbound Regional in Las Vegas, which I literally arrived home from 6 hours ago on the plane, I was absolutely enamored by not only the event, but by that Timo hat. I got in nice. I was at the store. I was looking at all the things. I got a box, and I was looking at the Timo hat. I'm like, I'm going to get the Timo hat. And I messaged you. I'm like, I'm going to get the Timo hat. And you're like, get it. And do you remember what I said back?
Yeah, you said that you'd left it. And I was like, there's a big queue. I was like, don't worry about it. It's not that important.
No, I left without the Timo hat because I said I had to win best of Timo first. I had to pay the respect, man. I can't come on here not being best of Timo wearing the hat too. It just ain't right. But dude, I got to tell you, we got so much to talk about today. We're going to talk about the Las Vegas Regional. We're talking about the results. We're going to talk about the meta. We're going to talk about some of the standout decks. But first, let's start with my experience because a lot of people are obviously really interested in Riftbound and really interested in these regional events. They're massive celebrations for Riftbound and the entire community. And for me, I love just walking down the street and just the people behind me are literally talking about a Riftbound match and what happened to them and stuff like you're completely immersed in Riftbound. And I know, first of all, I just have to say probably the food in Bologna was a little better. I paid $14 for the worst chicken wrap sandwich I think I've ever had in my entire life. Joe, you'd have been insulted compared to what you probably got in Bologna.
I heard a rumor that someone said on Twitter that a lot of people were getting food poisoning from the venue, which I'm not sure how true that is. It's just a story I heard. Meanwhile, in Bologna, without doubt, the best venue food I've ever experienced in my life. It was unbelievable.
The food was awful. I'll tell you that. It was absolutely awful. So I exclusively ate at the venue. So the way it worked was throughout the day, I literally ate at the venue the entire time. Whenever I had a little bit of downtime, I ran there, got a little sandwich or whatever, paid way too much for it. I didn't get food poisoning, but the food was awful. I remember I was trying to just keep my energy up because I slept almost non-existent. I stayed at a hotel in the Fairmont district of Las Vegas, and when I was booking, I'm like, oh, this looks kind of relatively inexpensive, and it looks like a cool area. But what I didn't know was that there was literally a concert hall outside my window that played music till 2 a.m. every single night. Dude, my watch said I only slept for 7 hours over those 2 days. I was laying there. I'm like, I just want to play Riftbound. Please let me sleep. I just want morning to come because I'm excited. But also, bro, I just need to be able to think, right? So add that to the fact that the food was absolutely disaster. So I'm in there and I'm like, I got to get some energy. So I bought I almost never drink Coca-Cola. So I pay $5 American for a Coke, which is absolutely insane. And long story short, I'm complaining about all irrelevant stuff. Everyone's like, why is this guy going off about all these random things? What I'll tell you though about the event. So I didn't get into the main event, right? We know this. So if you're somebody who misses out on the ticket and you don't get into the main event and you're like, damn it, right? That's what I really wanted to do. I totally understand your frustration. I felt the exact same way you did. But I'll tell you that there was so much going on that I did not feel like I didn't get a great experience. I had a fantastic experience. And I think a major part of that was the quality of the side events and the quality of the prizing at the side events. Because the side events prizing were no joke. In fact, some people did some math and they were like, these plated cards go for quite a bit. You can win some serious amount of tickets. And you can definitely, if you're a competitive player, score playing those side events. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on side events as a whole, both in Riftbound and in your experience in Lorcana too.
Yeah, I think the prize pool tickets is a really interesting thing because I'm sure it was happening in Vegas. In Bologna, there was lots of people obviously off the record, not anything official, but people are selling tickets, right? I think it was $20, $30 for a couple of tickets, or maybe even more. And I think the tickets were worth the most on the Friday, and then they got worth less and less because people were really trying to gun for those expensive metal cards. So I think it's awesome that those side events are able to be chased. I do think they'll probably tweak it a little bit where maybe they try and spread out the amount of Dravens that you can get. So there's still Dravens available on Sunday. Maybe one thing that a friend of mine said that they could do is what Yu-Gi-Oh does with prize wall tickets, which is that they're like digital and tied to your account, because that would mean that you can't trade for them, which a lot of people will really like that you can trade for them. But imagine you're going to this event like on your own and you're really after like, oh, I really want to get myself a Irelia metal card. Chances are, if you're just doing it on your own, it's not going to happen, right? Because there's going to be groups of people like working together, people buying tickets. So that's definitely something that I think could be something moving forwards. But overall, the fact that people that aren't playing main event, there's so many side events, like I'm really tempted next time, Alex, to like try my hand at the 2v2, for example. I heard that was like a really good way to get tickets. I think it's awesome. And I'm so glad to hear, despite not having a main event ticket, you were still able to have so much fun. Because I've been suggesting to some friends of mine for Lille, like you can still go do side events. I'm sure it's going to be a great time. So I'm so glad to hear that you had such a good time.
Yeah, I'll talk some specifics to give you guys an idea of the types of side events. So I was first of all, I wasn't there on Friday. I arrived Friday night, slept for 3 hours, and then did the full Saturday, full Sunday. On Saturday, I kind of enrolled into their Super Saturday event, which is essentially almost an equivalent of their main event, but just for the Saturday. And there's no like day 2. It just kind of cuts to a top 8 or 16 or whatever. I think it was top 8. And then after like 7 rounds. And the nice thing about that, if you score within the top 128, you got a ton of tickets for the prize wall that you could either, of course, trade, sell, whatever, but obviously go into the prize wall, get a whole bunch of stuff. Each ticket was a pack. And like it was awesome. And the thing was, it was competitive, but it was friendly. And it was a legitimate event. Like it was like I was immersed for the entire day. And so that was awesome. And then on the Sunday, I want to peruse around a little bit. I bought a couple singles here and there because the LGS in my area don't sell singles. And I entered a 3v3, which was so cool. And so 2v2 is interesting, but 3v3 is really, really fascinating. And I think that these types of these formats need to be explored more and need to be celebrated more. So the way 3v3 works is everyone opens 5 packs. So in standard sealed, it's 6, and this one it's 5. The reason for this is because you get to use a shared pool of cards across all 3 players. So if I'm playing, so I played Azir almost the entire weekend. Like when I tell you I played Azir, buddy, I'm not joking. I literally played Azir as my constructed deck, and then at the 3v3, I drafted Azir, basically. It was so silly how I played. But so I had Azir, but I was able to pull from my teammates' packs to build an ideal Azir deck, right? And my teammate was like, I'm going to play Draven. We pulled a Draven Legend. Great choice for something like Sealed, right? So he was playing that. And my other teammate was playing Jax because they were hyped up about what they saw on the main stage, which we'll talk about later, by the way. Jax, what a showing. But it was super cool. Like it was a really cool thing. And the way it worked was basically you got paired up in Swiss, and there was three matches going on because it's 3v3, and you're not attacking each other. It's just best 2 of 3. So if I win and my other teammate wins, we get the tickets. If I win and they both lose, they get the tickets. Like the opponent gets the tickets. So you're all playing at the same time, and it's best 2 of 3. Which was super cool. And sometimes 2 games would finish fast. It's 1-1. And then everyone's watching that third game, be like, come on, man. And here's the thing. You're also allowed to like not necessarily coach, but help your teammate. But everything you say has to be audible. So you're like, if you're like, hey, I think you should play that card there. That's the card you should play. You're not allowed to whisper it, but you can say it out loud, right? And there's some nuance to the rules and stuff. Like judges were kind of clarifying some because it was relatively new. So, obviously like that's the way we were playing, and that's the way the judges said we could. Like you could give advice, but it had to be audible to your opponent. You could never whisper. There couldn't be any secret information. So whatever you say to your partner, like I can show him my hand or them my hand and say like, what do you think about this card? And my opponent can't see, but my teammate can. And they can say, that's not the right card right now. Or yeah, play that after you play that one first or whatever. And as long as it's completely audible, it's all good. So I thought that was super cool. You got a lot of tickets for it. So you got basically 2 tickets each per win. It was 7 rounds or 6 rounds, 5 rounds. I don't remember. Whatever. It was a decent amount of rounds, not too expensive. And I felt like it was definitely worth it. It was a lot of fun. So long story short, what I'm trying to say is if you don't get a main event ticket, the side events are worth it. I had a tremendous time. Now, of course, would I have liked to have tried my luck at the main event? Absolutely. But I still got a ton of reps in. If anything, if I'm able to go to a future event, I feel more confident now that I would be able to perform better with a constructed Azir or whatever I want to do. Maybe some Teemo, who knows? But yeah, it was a great experience, even just playing side events.
Nah, that's awesome to hear. I think that's like one of the most fascinating things about Riftbound. It's, yeah, okay, we're used to playing it 1v1, but it was originally designed, wasn't it, as a multiplayer game. So there's so much potential there. Like on the Monday morning, Sunday night in Bologna, some friends were playing 2v2 and I was watching it. It just looked so fascinating and so interesting. So really, really keen to try and check out some more of those formats myself. And it's great to hear that you had such a good time despite not being in the main event. I'd love to ask like some of the smaller details as well. Was there free water in the Vegas event? That's brilliant.
Yeah, so right in the center of the hall, they had like I was expecting more of like those fountain things, and they probably were somewhere. I didn't find them, but in the center of the main exhibition hall, they had like literally like one of those water coolers that you'd expect in like an office building or something like that. And as soon as it ran out, someone came and put a whole new bottle on top. Boom, boom. And all day people were filling their own bottles there. No problem. There was definitely free water. And you're right, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Because the water at the concession thing was like $4.50 for like a bottle like this. It was so dumb. I was like, man, it's so expensive.
It makes such a big difference. It's really good to hear that. We had the same thing in Bologna, like in the middle, some water coolers. And especially in like the main event where you often might go to overtime and there's not much time between the rounds, right? It's so good and so important to actually have access to that. I think like one thing that it sounded like Bologna did better apart from the food is the table space I forgot to mention last week. We had so much space on our tables. Like I've never felt more comfortable in terms of space. Like I have my big pad next to me and there was plenty of room for it. I've heard that in Vegas, maybe the tables were a little bit tighter, which is honestly kind of to be expected. Like in Bologna, I couldn't believe how wide the tables were, but that's definitely something I wanted to mention would be great to see across the board, like just as much space as possible. Like the play setting in Bologna was brilliant. Did you have that sort of feeling in Vegas, the tables were a little bit tight, or how was that for you over in the side events?
I don't feel like they got in the way, but we could have used more space. Like for instance, my deck box was like kind of on my mat. Like I kind of wish if my mat's fully clear, my deck box is sitting completely to the side, and my person beside me can also do the same. That's enough space, but we couldn't do that. We had to kind of have our deck boxes a little bit on our mats and kind of like, you know, we bumped into each other's stuff over there. We could have used a little bit more elbow room for sure, but it wasn't, I don't think, detrimental or anything like that.
Yeah, it also depends on the venue, right? Like, you know, I think it's going to just depend on the venue with those sorts of things. But it's really great to see them taking care of things like water, trying to give as much space as possible. I think like the bottom line is I just really encourage them to continue doing those things, especially the water. It really does make such a big difference. I couldn't quite believe like how good it made me feel just to have access to free water at a venue. It really was brilliant.
Yeah, there are two things I do want to mention. First, there was one kind of like bit of a misstep. So we were essentially kicked out of the venue prior to top 8 being shown, which I thought was kind of sad. We had been like kind of watching and like obviously like standing around the top tables, like there's crowds everywhere. They literally had to like tape off like where you can stand and stuff like that. It was generally like, it was super cool being able to watch like Alan and like people at the top tables play. But near the end where they were doing kind of like the streams and stuff like that, people started to kind of congregate near the screen. And while that was happening, all of a sudden they're just like, it was like 6:20 or so, and the venue was supposed to close at 6. We figured, well, we're gonna finish these matches, right? They're like, no, like you guys got to go. And it seemed like the Riot staff wasn't too excited about it. Like it's not like Riot was kicking us out, like, yeah, get out of here, guys. Like it sounded like there must have been like there was probably something behind the scenes going on with like venue being like, nope, you guys booked till 6. We gave you an extra 30 minutes. You guys got to go. Like, I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but I know that like there was a general sense of sadness where like we weren't able to observe the top 8 live. We just had to watch it on our phones. And there was like a hotel showing it on the side, which is kind of cool, but like there's no audio and it's like outside in the middle of, not in the middle of the night, but kind of late. So it wasn't really the ideal viewing experience, but yeah, that was a little unfortunate.
Yeah, it makes sense. It wouldn't even surprise me. I think you're right that it's like some sort of like venue thing that they've agreed with in the contract. Maybe it's even like some sort of Las Vegas like law. I kind of doubt it in Vegas, but in Bologna it was similar because I'd sort of just finished my top cut matches, right? Or not my top cut. I'd finished the Swiss rounds, all 13 or 14. And then I was getting like pictures taken backstage with my card. And as I was wandering on the hall, kind of get told you can either go and watch the top 8 or you have to leave. So in Bologna, people were able to stay if they were watching at the screen, but everybody else was asked to leave. So I guess that Riot will definitely want, and UVS will definitely want spectators there, because I know that they were showing the crowd quite a lot on the Bologna stream and really celebrating that. So hopefully that can be sorted for the next time, because it's such a good feeling, isn't it, to have the experience of watching the game in the venue. And it's also just really good for the players. It's really good for the audience at home when you can actually hear the noise of the crowd and that sort of thing. It really adds to the excitement of the event. And it's really important that if people are at the venue and they want to watch the event at the end of the day, that's like the perfect time to celebrate Riftbound. So hopefully that's something we can fix for the future. I'm glad you
agree.
It.
100%, dude. I agree. And I wish I was able to stay for sure. Still had a very positive experience. For the life of me, I can't remember the second point that I was going to make. If it comes to me, I'll let you know. Should have written it down. I usually have tons of notes, and today it's like just like right off the plane trying to get into it, right? So
yeah, we need to say, Alex, like for those who don't know, so Alex went from Vegas to Canada this morning, went to work, and has now come back and is still doing the pod. I was like, dude, we can have a week off. It's okay. He's like, absolutely not. I'm doing it. So big respect, man. I
appreciate that. Yeah, like I literally flew out at 11:30 at night, did the red-eye flight on the plane, and couldn't sleep because you're on a plane. Like it's awful. And
how long is the flight roughly?
It was like 5 hours. Mm-hmm. Massive time change by 3 hours too. So then, I leave at like 11:30. I get back at like 6:30 a.m. Get through everything because the airport's kind of quiet, and I literally got into my car and drove to work. So it's the grind, baby. And someone actually asked me about that, and I was like, oh, it's. Like, listen, I'm more engaged when I'm grinding, man. Like, I feel alive. And then I'll black out tonight eventually. I remember what I was going to say, by the way. The amount of people that came up to me and, like, said, like, hey, I love you and Joe's podcast. It actually blew me away. I want you guys to know that it was so heartwarming to get that. And, Joe, I got to tell you, I got some praise. People were like, oh, and congratulations on the best of Timo. I was like, it wasn't me. Like, I had nothing to do with it.
I mean, so I got some
praise. So thanks, Joe.
No, that's also. I also met like a lot of really lovely people. So yeah, we really appreciate it. I think it was really nice for both of us to go to one of these events. And,
it was.
And really like enjoy the game and enjoy the experience. So I'm so glad to hear that despite not having that main event ticket, you still had such a good time.
Yeah,
apart from the hotel situation and the food.
Yeah, and having to go to work in the morning and everything like that. But that's my run down there. And again, thank you so much to everyone who stopped by both to speak to Joe in Bologna and to me in Vegas. It really, really does mean a lot to us. You guys are the absolute best. A couple things. First of all, we got to talk about this. I didn't even tell you I was going to show you this. Did you see this?
Nope.
This is going to play really nicely for the audio viewers, by the way. Audio viewers, good language there. Unleashed, during the stream, they kind of just showed it on the screen and then didn't really say much about it. But these are the new runes, and they look beautiful. Look at that calm rune. It is, to me, absolutely outstanding. They are really cooking here. Joe, listen, the card art in this game is absolutely ridiculous. And I've tried not to spend money on runes because, I'm a little frugal, as they say. I think I'm going to have to, drop $200 on runes. I can't help myself. These are ridiculous.
Is Unleashed set 3 or set 4? I haven't got the names down for the new sets yet. I'm guessing set
it's 3. Yeah, it's set 3. Yeah.
The Order one's kind of calling my name, if I'm honest. Like it's giving me like a Reggie Rock from Pokemon, that kind of vibe. Like the stone statue that's also a rune. That's a real cool one. These are very, very nice.
They're nice.
I also got from the Friday night side event we did in Bologna. I did like the big Nexus night. And I got a Nexus Spirit Forge pack and got like a nice alt rune from that, and those look really nice with like the little bit of Spirit Blossom. That was another thing that I got to do that side event, the big Nexus night, and they were handing out kind of like goodies. Like people got like Tibbers hats, and like the two guys next to me got like these big League of Legends statues, which I think are like 200, 300 recommended retail price, and they were just giving them away. So that was an awesome experience as well at Bologna.
Fantastic. Yeah, hopefully the next time I get to go to a regional, I'm trying to get to that Friday night too, because I just couldn't make it work with the schedule. But yeah, these runes I thought looked absolutely ridiculous, and they all look phenomenal. And even like the way like the chaos looks like a storm, it's just so artistic. They're fantastic. But I just want to show you that we got to talk about the real meat and potatoes of the conversation. Let's talk about day one meta of Las Vegas. A little different than Bologna. However, we're going to talk about the original day one meta, and then we're going to talk about the day two conversions. We got both here. Legends, to no surprise to anybody, Draven, Irelia, and Coccia, Ezreal, Viktor are the top 5 in that order. Draven running 15%. Now, considering how good we know Draven is, 15% is not crazy for a competitive event. It really goes to show, we said it before, how good the best of prizing is.
Yeah, I think without the best of prizing, Draven would be pushing 40%. I think it would be like 35%. 40 is when you know you've got like a really, really tier 0 deck. To be fair, Draven didn't have necessarily the best performance in Bologna either, which probably helped keep it down a little bit. But certainly that best of prizing. The big surprise for me on this one, Alex, is actually Ornn. More players played Ornn than played Ahri. I was looking for the word there. More Ornns than Ahris, which is unbelievable. More Ornns than all sorts of stuff. Like
Teemo,
Ornn's
Master
very popular.
Yi, 31 Master Yis versus like, what was it, 50-something Ornns?
Yeah, it was so interesting.
52? It's crazy.
But Viktor as well, I think Alex is definitely a deck I want to check out more. I've been so impressed by this Viktor deck that topped in Bologna. Very, very cheap to assemble as well. So I imagine that's one that people are going to be building quite a bit moving forwards.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Viktor deck a little later on, but I think it's similar to Purple. I think Purple's a little stronger. Chaos has that little bit of an edge in terms of its spell casting, but you cannot sleep on the destructive capability of Yellow spell casting. Like, the amount of order removal is incredible, and even something like Hidden Blade can be used defensively too to draw into your hand and stuff like that, especially if you know, like, oh, this token's gonna die. You could, react with it hidden, take out your own token, and then just draw 2 cards anyways. Like, I think there's a lot of really clever mechanics you can do with Hidden Blade, and you got a ton of natural removal as well. Yeah, definitely super good. Lucian at 51, people being playing that particular legend, which I thought was surprising. I think Lucian is a very aggressive type of legend, but I think that when you have someone like Draven, and I wonder if Draven starts to step on something like Lucian's toes a little bit, because like they have kind of that similar like aggressive battlefield conquering playstyle. And I'd be curious about your thoughts on that, because I was surprised to see only 51 Lucians, despite the fact that like I think he just plays really well, especially with the way you can ready him and move him around.
Yeah, I like Lucian. I think the Chosen Champion is like the best part about Lucian. But I do think you're right. Like if you're looking to play a Fury deck, a red deck, you're probably going to be looking at Draven, maybe even like Kaiser as well, right? But Lucian, it's definitely a really strong deck. Like the signature spell, which is sort of similar to Ride the Wind, is really good as well. I think Fiora down at 50 players as well is maybe the deck that's fallen off the most compared with the Chinese results. I think we saw back-to-back Fioras in Chinese regional finals, and we haven't seen that same amount of success. But Lux is a deck I'm really excited to see being popular. I think it's a really interesting deck, sort of similar to Viktor, but usually you're seeing like the Jace and Vanguard Armory combos. And then a lot of the less popular decks. I think there's a lot of decks here with real potential. Like Volibear, I think is really decent, and only 15 players brought it. Darius, I think, only 31 Annies as well. Like I feel like Annie has to be a really good deck, surely. I just love how much variety is in this game, and the Best of Legends really pushes it. But even without that, like I think there's so much diversity and fun to be had here.
Yeah, because with the Best of Legends, like even if you don't win the event, you're still a winner, right? And I think that we've talked about so many times, it is a genius kind of inclusion. And with the side events, you have the plated legends too, but with those in particular, they don't have the foil finish that the best ofs have, right? But they're still beautiful cards. Like they're still showpieces that you would absolutely love to have. In terms of cards that did not see much play, as I said, like we talked about Master Yi, we talked about Annie. What are your thoughts on Set? Because like Set had 22 players, 1.6% of the meta. There was a time during Origins where Set had some really, really good results, and then he fell off a cliff completely. I'd be curious about your thoughts on like what Set needs, because like for me, it just seems like he's completely fallen off.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I saw that Frodan, who's like a very well-known TFT streamer that's been playing quite a bit of Riftbound. He played Leona in Houston. He played Set and did quite well. Made it to day 2, but I think he was the second place play Set. So there was still like a couple of Set players with pretty good results. It's interesting. I think Set worked well in Set 1 because it was often like big unit versus big unit. You think of like Dr. Mundo, for example, and Set could do quite well in those sorts of formats. But maybe in like the Draven meta with like Rebukes, I think in particular, Rebuke is probably causing Set a lot of problems. So I imagine the meta is just not super well suited for Set right now.
And as we move on to the day 2 results and conversions, what I'll say is that it was fascinating kind of being in the hall and hearing kind of the scuttlebutt, people discussing how their games are going and stuff, because everyone had a very similar consensus where it was, my games were varied, they were interesting, they were fun, and people were respectful, and they had a great time. You even saw it in the final match. People, they were fist bumping. It was fantastic, laughing together at the table. Judges were smiling. That's what you want to see in something like Riftbound. And everyone was talking about how, like, oh, they didn't just play Draven after Draven after Draven for 7 rounds, right?
Yeah.
Imagine doing 13 rounds of Draven mirror matches. I mean, we'll talk about the top 8 in a second, but there's only so much you can take of mirror matches, right? And in other games, it happens. It happens where there's only a couple meta calls you can make. And if you want to be competitive, especially with a best of prizing, like, you got to play the meta stuff. And because of the best of prizing here, the experience, even if you are playing Draven, you're like, you know what, I'm chasing the best deck. I'm playing Draven. I don't care. I want best of Draven. I'll win the damn tournament. I don't care, right? Cool. You can do that. Absolutely. Still, you're going to have a better experience because along the way, you're going to play against Volibear. You're going to play against Lux. You're going to play against Lee Sin, maybe. I don't know, maybe Lee Sin. But you're going to play against a variety, and your experience is going to be positive as well. Everyone benefits from this type of tournament with the best of prizing. So anyways, this is the first set of day 1 conversions. We do have a second set as well for those interested. So anyways, Joe, I'll pass it on to you for the first set of top performers going into day 2.
Yeah, also just to sort of piggyback off your last point, like, the variety tests you as a player as well, right? Like, in my run, I played against Ahri, Master Yi, Azir, Annie. Like, the fact that I'm trying all these different matchups, if I hadn't practiced, I would have been in really big trouble. But it really tests you and tests the deck. So I love it. I love it. Love it. Draven, like, with 37% conversion rate. Now, we talk about how in the overall meta picture, how the impact of the best ofs has on it, right? It's also important to recognize that the best ofs are having an impact on the conversion rate. The players that are playing Draven are kind of accepting that they're not chasing the best of, but they're just trying to play the very best deck to make it through to day 2. So you would actually expect that Draven's conversion rate is going to be inflated as a result of lots of other people deciding to play worse decks, right? Which I think is fair to say that a lot of people, you know, myself included, I played Teemo because why would I play Draven if I can chase a best of? So the conversions are going to be naturally higher and slightly inflated. So having said that, 37% is still an extremely high percentage. But then if you look at some of the other best conversions, you've got Irelia at 25%, Rek'Sai at 27.3%, Master Yi at 25.8%, Sets up there at 18.2%, Kai'Sa 21%. So there's a lot of really good conversion rates in this one as well. I mean, Volibear 13.3, Darius 10.6, Annie 9.7. So there's a lot of really solid conversion rates. No Leonas, Lee Sins, Rumbles or Garens made it through to day 2, although it's fair to say that these decks weren't heavily represented in the first place either. But that's got to be a nice feeling. If you're the Renata or Yasuo and you make it to day 2 and you see this graphic, you are celebrating in the lobby. You're doing knee slides before day 2's even begun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say that, like, with Rek'Sai, I'm glad you brought him up. I think, I believe Rek'Sai is a lady Void Monster. Rek'Sai, I think, is probably one of the more slept-on decks out there. My experience with Rek'Sai has been very positive. And I've been playing a lot of Azir. I played Azir almost exclusively this weekend. But I think I really want to build a very aggressive Rek'Sai list because that signature spell is insane. And I think that the amount of pressure you can apply, especially on some of these slower, like, miracle-style builds that are gaining in popularity that we'll discuss later, I think Rek'Sai can do some serious damage to it. So I would expect in future tournaments, Rek'Sai to be perhaps a silent performer.
I've also been really impressed by Rek'Sai. And it's also like, when I see Rek'Sai, I'm reminded of how deep this game is, right? Like, even though I've sort of no-lifed this game for the last few weeks, there's cards in Rek'Sai which I don't even know what they do. Right? I genuinely don't, even though I've been playing so much. And that's what's so cool about how diverse the metagame is, but also, like, just the game's systems to have things like signature spells and really unique leaders, which really reward heavy synergy. So yeah, I'm definitely really looking forward to Lil. We've got Lil in Europe, which is also going to be set to. I think this meta is so diverse and so open. And I wouldn't even be too surprised, Alex, if we maybe see some bans. It wouldn't totally shock me. I think Called Shot is the card which I think might have to go. Maybe we need to talk about that a little bit more on another episode, but I wouldn't be totally shocked to see Called Shot getting banned at this point. And I wouldn't be totally shocked either to see maybe Draven getting some sort of change to the ruling. Like, they just change within the rules that combat only happens if damage is applied. That would maybe like errata Draven without actually erratering him, just changing the rules. But yeah, I think Cold Shot has proven itself to be a bit too popular. I have to say, as soon as I saw the card, I kind of knew that I was going to be playing this in Nocturne. But even without Nocturne, we've seen many of the lists just utilize this so well. Obviously, the synergy with the Purple Sea on Ezreal kind of takes it to the next level. But even without those cards, I think this card is always going to be quite problematic. If you look at a card like Pot of Greed, it's like the most famous Yu-Gi-Oh card of all time, right? Which is draw 2 cards. Well, this kind of does that. Okay, it costs you 2 power, but with gold and with seals, you know, I just wouldn't be too surprised if this ends up on the chopping block. Stack deck, maybe also, but I think that Cold Shot is like the real big offender of maybe increasing the power level a bit too much, particularly when we're seeing so many games go to time, Alex. This is the kind of card which really drags the games on that little bit longer as well.
Almost every single sentence you said there, it made me want to like respond with something. Like going to time, the games are taking way too damn long. We got kicked out of the event, man. Like we just finished talking about how we didn't get to watch the end because it took so damn long. There's that. Talking about, bans and stuff. I don't know. It's a very contentious topic.
Yeah.
I almost lean towards, I don't know if we need a ban yet. I'm just not convinced we do. We also have like, maybe Unleashed is going to provide counterplay to this. We don't know what those cards look like, right? We don't know what the design landscape looks like. And I don't know if Cold Shot quite hits that level. Because like even with the Cold Shot obviously being played in Miracle Draven, that didn't end up taking the tournament, right?
That's true.
So, I mean, like, so there is that point too. The other thing I want to mention here is in my sleep deprivation, I did not update the topics that you see underneath us. So please ignore those. That's embarrassing. They all say like Chinese regional and stuff like that.
I never even
like
noticed.
2 weeks ago, I think. I don't remember. But at the end of the day, man, I think that Cold Shot's a fascinating one because, first of all, it means a lot that Joe's saying that Cold Shot's a problem because dude built the deck using Cold Shot with Nocturnes, and you know damn well without Cold Shot, those Nocturnes aren't coming out as fun, fast, and furious as they were in Bologna for you, buddy. So, like, I mean, you did benefit from this card, and you're the one saying that it probably has to get maybe considered banned. I mean, that to me, that like is that's a big call out because it goes to show you like you recognize what that power level is, and you still think that maybe it needs to get a little slap.
Yeah, I think the thing with this card is like, when are you ever not going to play it, right? Admittedly, some decks aren't, which, you know, goes to show you how tight the deck building is. But purple does look to be very strong overall. I think purple getting some hits. I think Stack Deck, Cold Shot are sort of like these staple cards which are going to continue to see play in purple decks until they're banned or rotated out, just by their nature of how consistent they are. And yeah, Draven may be the other one. Like I say, I think Reaver's Row and the Overzealous Fan triggering the Draven draw feels quite unintuitive and unfair. I wouldn't be too surprised if they sort of hit Draven in some way. They've said they won't errata cards, but there is now precedent because we're going to talk about Jax soon. There was actually a ruling change on Jax between Bologna and Vegas, which is quite unbelievable, where some of the rules were changed within the game, which inadvertently buffed the Jax leader. So while they've said that they're not going to errata cards, what they can do is change the rules themselves, which can then have an impact on the leaders. And I think that's what might end up happening with Draven, right? You just make it so Reaver's Row and Overzealous Fan, if no combat actually happens, like basically changing combat to mean damage has to be applied, or like you go to the damage step. So if something's stunned in a battlefield, that would still be combat. It would just be 0 damage being assigned outwards. But as long as some damage is being assigned or the damage assign step happens, then I think that's when combat should happen. But if there's no damage step, like if someone runs away from Reaver's Row, I don't think Draven should be drawing there. So we'll have to see. I would be surprised, I think, at this point if they don't do anything. But also, like in a physical card game, a lot of the time it can just make sense to just wait and see what happens. They've done that now. They've got a lot of data to go off with Bologna and with Vegas. They were never going to ban anything before these events. So if we're ever going to see a ban in Spirit Forged, I would expect it to happen in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that kind of stuff can have a trickle-down effect too, because that'll affect fight or flight too, right?
Yes,
so like the interaction
definitely.
with fight or flight will be kind of changed too. So yeah, there's a lot going on behind the scenes with Riftbound. Obviously, we love the game; it's a phenomenal game, but around the edges, it does need a little bit of improvement in terms of like pace of play, for instance. And I actually had this thought, right? I was like, man, pace of play is so problematic. Like, would that negatively impact the chances for like a digital client? Like, who's going to sit in front of their PC for an hour But then I'm like, wait a minute. The digital client would speed up a lot of the monotonous time-wasting stuff, like activation of runes and all the beginning steps and everything. Like, boom, 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 it's just done. Boom, 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 it's just done. Do your turn, 30-second rope, whatever, right? I think the digital client would actually remedy a lot of the slow play for the most part, which I think would be a big deal. Yeah, and also playing in the events, I'm more of a believer in the 3-game format, best of 3. I've always thought the game played pretty well, best of 1. It still is good, still is fun, and a lot of the events are still best of 1, which is great. But best of 3, I think, is really fascinating. And perhaps, do you do like a top 64 top cut best of 3? Are the early rounds best of 1? That doesn't really solve some of the issues we're kind of experiencing. But I don't know. I think something has to be done with the speed of play because it's just taking way too long.
Yeah, I think at the moment the big problem is the overtime rules. The overtime rules actually sort of incentivize people to play slowly because when you're in like the third game, you sort of see you've got 10 minutes left and you just sort of have to analyze, okay, if I end up on turn 0, I'm in a really bad spot, and then it incentivizes slow play beforehand to stall out. I think the overtime rules of the game are basically leading to things being slowed down more. I'm definitely a much bigger fan of best of 3, but I will say I know that Flesh and Blood, which is seen as the most competitive card game, is a best of 1 system. So it's not like it's gonna, a lot of people are gonna say best of 1, no way, but we'll have to see. The pace of play is definitely a really, really big problem for the game at the moment. I would say it's its biggest long-term concern that I have for the game, but we'll have to see how things pan out.
And with that, before we talk about the decks, let's talk about the top 8. Now, I do have a little bit of concern here. It's a lot of Draven, man. This is a lot of Draven. It's too much Draven, let's be honest. There was a podcaster who once said that they thought maybe Draven was overhyped. I wonder who that was. I wonder if they have anything that they'd like to say about that now. Joe, I think it's your time to.
You could have asked me this last week in Bologna, right? In Bologna,
yeah, it would have been better to bring it up last week. Yeah.
No, really good showing for Draven. It's really interesting to see how much better it did this weekend compared with the last. I can't say I'm too surprised. I mean, you could also argue, right, with this week in Vegas, there's a lot more data to be had going into this event, right? You've got the whole of Bologna. For example, right, the Teemo players, they would have been able to see the 2 Teemo lists, which did really well. And similarly, people that are playing Draven, I think in Bologna, there was probably quite a big skill gap in terms of the secret testing and deck building. But now you've seen the best Draven lists in Bologna from the very best players, it's kind of all out in the open at that point, right? And maybe that's helped Draven do that a little bit better because people have that refined Draven list, or those refined lists. So it had a great weekend, didn't it, Draven? And it won all of its top 8 matches as well. So it was 4 Dravens in the semi-finals, and therefore 2 Dravens in the final. So probably not the most exciting one to watch in the end, which is definitely a bit disappointing. But maybe for the long-term health of the game, this might have actually been a good thing because it might force Riot to respond.
I have a bit of a hot take. I don't even know if this is a hot take, honestly. I don't think it's great that you have 4 Dravens in semifinals and Draven mirror match, and I think especially with Draven too, because you know what those games feel like sometimes? They feel like, have you ever seen a hockey fight or a UFC fight or boxing fight when they just kind of size each other up and no one's throwing a punch and they're just kind of bouncing around and because they know the first guy that throws the punch is just going to get counter punched or whatever. That's exactly what the Draven matchups were. They're like building bases before anyone commits to anything. And it just turns into okay, who's drawing better simulator, right? Who gets the better draws off the top to establish a bigger board state to then go into the locations, and then obviously the skill and the maneuvering and everything, that all happens. But it's this weird standoff style of play where it's you're watching it and you're no one's going in anywhere. And then when they do, they go in and then they fight or flight to just exit. And it's oh my gosh, there's nothing happening, right? The points are being scored kind of, but I don't think it's in the spirit of Riftbound. These Draven mirror matches are not in the spirit of Riftbound. And I don't want to sound mean or dismissive, but having the semifinals and the finals both be Draven was rough. Yeah. At least the finals was different variations of Draven, which it's we're getting a little into the weeds here to get excited about that in particular. But anyways, I'd be interested in your take, and obviously you guys in the comments too. But for me, I was kind of like sitting there being like, yeah, this is not a good look.
No, definitely agree. I mean, it was on sort of in the early hours of the morning over here in Europe, so I didn't catch much of it. I saw the end of the final when I woke up, but it's definitely not something that's good for the long-term health of the game, for like view experience, but maybe it also might just force Riot to act, right? Like that, seeing this after Bologna, they might be like, yeah, nothing to worry about, but I think this really probably is quite eye-opening. The big problem really with Draven is you're rewarded for just playing the game, right? It's with Ezreal, for example, you have to go out of your way to get the draw from him, and he taps when you do it. With Draven, you just sort of naturally, by playing the game, draw cards as you go, right? And then you can abuse that a little bit more with cards like Fight or Flight, Overzealous Fan, and this sort of thing. So I think it is problematic. Added to that, you've got an unbelievable Chosen Champion and an unbelievable signature gear and a great color pairing. It just ticks all the boxes, doesn't it? And I think that legend ability in particular is really what pushes it over the edge, right? The legend ability could probably be like slightly above average, and you would still be interested in playing the deck for the champion and the signature gear. But the legend ability, as it turns out, is quite busted. So yeah, not surprised to see Draven do so well.
All right, Joe, let's break down the decks from the Vegas regional tournament for Riftbound, starting with the first place finisher, Sam D. Sherman, who did come in with a mid-ranged Draven. And we will be talking about the Miracle Draven that was also in the finals as well. But let's start here. So this was the winner. Congratulations to Sam on their fantastic play throughout the tournament. And best of Draven, too. There was so much on the line here. Best of Draven, the tournament, everything, right? The mat, and it's just incredible. What are your general thoughts on this deck? It is, of course, the mid-range variation of it. And it was designed very specifically, I think, for the mirror match in mind, because you are seeing a lot of tech here for the mirror match. So I'd be very interested in your thoughts on this deck and why you think it performed as well as it did.
Yeah, it is a really interesting take on Draven. I think that Miracle Draven was probably the favourite coming into the weekend, it's fair to say. And this one's playing 9 2-drops, which is something I really like to see, Alex. Like, you're trying to hit that curve consistently. Triple Tide Turner, admittedly, Tide Turner is usually a card you want to play later on in the game, but it doubles down to help give you that consistency of just having something to play on turn 1. And also heavy on the Noxus Hopeful, which means when you're at 4 energy, you're going to consistently be able to go 2-drop plus Noxus Hopeful for a really speedy start. I love to see Darius back in the mix as a 3-of, Kai'Sa as a 3-of as well, 2 of the best set 1 cards. And then Brian here Thundersong in the main deck is really, really cool to see. This card causes you all sorts of problems. If you're playing purple, it can hit Rebuke, it can hit hidden cards. It is a real nuisance to deal with. And also, Ride the Wind is like one of those cards that's so easy to cut. Maybe you just play 1, but the commitment to play 2 Ride the Winds doesn't sound like a lot, right? But you're really having to go out of your way to find room for cards like this in the deck. And it just shows really how good this card is, that it's finding its way. 2 copies in the main. I think there might even be a 3rd copy in the sideboard, if I'm not so mistaken. But really interesting to see this take on Draven do so well with that Ferocious Forerunner as well. A card I know you like a lot, Alex.
I do. Well, it has that very consistent board presence, which I really do appreciate. But a card that I thought was a major standout in this tournament from all the footage I watched, and of course watching at the top tables, which I could not resist. I was watching top tables like almost every time I wasn't physically playing, even waiting between matches, I was at top tables. Mind Splitter. Mind Splitter was an absolutely incredible card in this tournament. I think it did a ton of damage to the opponent that was getting hit by it very consistently, not just from an information standpoint, but from, getting rid of important pieces that were being used to counter the Draven strategy. So Mind Splitter, I like your thoughts on that, because to me it seems like an absolute standout card. I'm surprised to see it in the sideboard here, but it was a very consistent inclusion and definitely was sideboarded in very frequently.
Yeah, I think what I underestimated with Mind Splitter is, yes, this card's good, but actually the information is almost better, right? Because you're also allowed to take notes. You see exactly what's in your opponent's hand. You know what you do and don't have to play around. One of the criticisms, there's a guy, George, who won one of the Chinese regionals. I think they got top 8 over in Houston, and they did like a big bit of text, like an article about their problems they have with Riftbound. And they said their kind of problem with the game at the highest level is there's so much might and so much threats that my opponent might have in hand. Do I play around Rebuke, Ride the Wind, Switcheroo? Like, I don't know. Well, with Mind Splitter, you do know what you need to play around because you know exactly what's in the hand. And that information goes a really long way towards the end of games. And it's also just a 7 might guy, which is a really good threshold, right? It's out of the range of things like Singularity. Yeah, okay, it's not going to be great into cards like Rebuke, but you can, of course, discard the Rebuke with the Mind Splitter in the first place, which helps mitigate that.
Yeah, and you've brought up Rebuke, which was honestly a superstar of the tournament as well. Rebuke being able to kind of remove those big bodies from the field of play. Do you see this as being a very consistent inclusion in these types of decks?
Yes. If I was to make one change from my Teemo deck, Alex, I think I would put a 3rd Rebuke on the sideboard. 2 Rebukes is like the agreed upon right amount. I think you could go to 3 in some cases. Like, the card is absolutely unbelievable. It's the best card I found against Draven in particular. Obviously, this deck isn't playing purple seals, which makes it that little bit more expensive. But I think if you're playing a purple seal version of Draven, then there's a real argument to go up to 3. Often you're going to be discarding it or putting it on the bottom of your deck. So I wouldn't be too surprised if this card gets up to 3 copies. This is probably the card that's keeping decks like Set and Master Yi out from the very top, right? It is just an unbelievable play. And again, it's a really, really good card against Draven as well. So I'm sure it would have come up clutch in the mirror matchup. Like, if you can bait your opponent into taking that 1 power off Draven Vanquisher and then rebuke it afterwards, it feels extremely satisfying.
Yeah, we have a number of decks we want to get through, but this being the winning one, I want to just spend a little more extra time on it here. I know Tide Turner is one of your absolute favorite cards in the entire game. It was used very effectively, both offensively and defensively, to protect cards like Draven, Vanquisher, and of course Darius at times. What are your thoughts on how top-level players are using Tide Turner, especially in mirror matches where, you know, maybe they don't want a very easy 2 might unit just to get swept up by an opposing Draven. Maybe they want to put more power into a location, or maybe they want to keep their Draven back, and maybe they'll just give a little trade out by allowing the Tide Turner just to kind of, protect a bigger unit and just ultimately give up a battlefield.
Yeah, it's so flexible, like being able to hide it as well and bamboozle your opponent potentially. That's certainly something which came in clutch for me in Bologna. And a huge part of the value of Tide Turner in this deck is it is just giving you that extra 2-drop. It's not really a true 2-drop. It's a card you want to play later. But if you don't find that Overzealous Fan or that Treasure Hunter, you're going to be extremely happy to have that Tide Turner on your opening turn. A lot of people talked about how 2-drops aren't as important anymore. No, they're still just as important in my opinion. Maybe slightly less so, but you'd much rather be playing a 2-drop than passing your opening turn, that's for sure.
And the final thing I'll mention here is Falling Star throughout the tournament. Very good at removing Ezreal. Ezreal's on board. There was a situation where one of the opponents had 2 Ezreals on board and both taken out by a single Falling Star, which was tremendous to see. Well, it depends on, I guess who you're cheering for. The second Draven, second place, TTA, did a remarkable job. You know what the thing about TTA was? So positive throughout the match. It really stood out to me how they were laughing and how much fun they were legitimately having. It that's the spirit of the game. I absolutely loved seeing that here. Talking about Ezreals, we have 3 Ezreals in this deck, and this is the miracle version of Draven. As you mentioned, this was expected to be the top performer. Came in second, which is still an absolutely insane result. So I would like your thoughts on this deck. And of course, you do have the 3 called shots, which we've already discussed at length.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see that the other deck, non-Miracle, sort of came out on top, because my gut feeling, just sort of like looking at these lists from the beginning, would be that I would favor the Miracle player, because they've just got that extra bit of juice, right? You've got the seals, which over the course of a long game can really add up, like the Rasa the Sunderer. I know in the sideboard there's also the Shovel, the Last Rites, which can replay your Rasas for free. Bushwhack is a really cool card in this one. It's a 2 energy, 1 power spell. Friendly units enter ready this turn and play a gold gear token exhausted. So you can just like hoard up your hand with your called shots, drop down a Bushwhack and 3 Rasa the Sunderers out of nowhere, hide 2 cards. You can just do some unbelievably insane plays with this one. The one Miracle card missing from this, which was in some of the other Draven lists, is Nocturne. We saw quite a few people maybe using 1 or 2 copies of Nocturne, not as often the full play set of all 3. You know what I would be doing if I was playing Alex? I would be playing 3 Nocturnes and Draven, but that's because I'm a bit of a Nocturne fanboy, I have to say. But I love the list overall. Like the Scrap Heap is one of those cards, extremely easy to cut and get rid of, but it's just very, very good. Of course, with the Zorn Warrens in the game 1, you've got the Traveling Merchant, and all of this is helping contribute towards your Wrath of the Sunder as being extremely cheap. You've got the Battering Rams, which can be costing next to nothing. The deck is just extremely strong, and it's very, very tight on space.
We had like a telepathic connection. I'm like, he's going to talk about Zon Warrants. And I drifted up to the battlefields, which I almost never do, exactly as you mentioned it. You'd think it was so perfect we edited it, but no, that was live. That's what telepathic links look like. But yeah, really interesting two approaches to Draven. And Scrap Heaps, yeah. Scrap Heaps are phenomenal, especially with that Zon Warrens, and you can generate so much value. And actually, TTA was dead to rights in a game and made a last stand because of an opening Bushwhack. And then they started their miracle turn and everything was coming in ready, right? So it gave them a chance, a major chance to stage a comeback. So yeah, Bushwhack was definitely cool. We would be remiss if we did not talk about Jax. I just saw your face light up. Jax is legit. What an absolute showing here. It could have made top 8. It did make top 8. What am I talking about? I mean, it could have made the top 4. It could have gone all the way. It was, okay, the very best gamer piloted this deck so well. And there was a couple things that really stood out to me. First of all, even if a hero's not meta or a legend's not meta, if you put the games in and you learn the nuance and the true way to play this hero to its min-maxed potential, you can find success. It's not just about the meta. It's about what you do with it, right? You can't just give me the, Sam's, winning Draven deck and expect me to go 1. It's not going to happen, right? You got to put the time in, you got to put the reps in, you got to know the matchups. And very best gamer was so well prepared here, played phenomenally well. This was Jax's big moment. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this deck because I absolutely love it.
Yeah, so Jax got a ruling change as far as I'm aware heading into Vegas, and immediately it caught my eye. I actually played against it online when I was doing a coaching session with someone, and we got absolutely cooked by it. This Counter-Strike signature spell, I was incredibly impressed with. I was telling my opponent, it doesn't work like that. You can't detach and reattach a gear to the same unit with the Jax Legend, but as it turns out, you can now. It was a ruling change, which is really, really significant with Brutalizer. If I was attached this turn, I have an additional +2 might. So with the Legend ability, in Bologna, you would not have been able to detach it and attach it to the same unit, but you can now do that, supposedly.
To get the +2, yeah.
Yeah, which is also really important for the Aphelios card as well. When you attach an equipment to me, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Ready 2 runes, channel 1 rune exhausted, buff a friendly unit. That would be much more difficult to pull off if it's your only unit and you have gear, whereas now it's really easy. You just only need 1 unit, you can detach and attach to the same thing and get all sorts of interesting triggers. So it was a strict buff. Signature spell looks really good. Orange and green is an interesting color combination, but you get access to some really good cards like the Charm, the Punch First, the Defies, the Guardian Angel is unbelievable. And Alex, for me, this Ruin Runner and the Stellarcorn Herder, every card in this deck just looks really good. So I really love the look of this one. I think it's the kind of deck I'm quite intrigued to play myself, I've got to say.
Stellarcorn Herder might be one of the better, I was going to say, obviously it's one of the better cards in set 2. It might be one of the best cards in set 2 that kind of just gets glossed over a little bit. People talk about Draven. People talk about Called Shot. Very few people are talking about Stellarcorn Herder. And I think that card is almost up there with them. Not quite. Called Shot's like that next tier. If Called Shot's S tier, Stellarcorn Herder is A tier all day long.
It's a great card. Yeah, really, really good. Big fan of it as well. There's some synergy here with the first mate where you can ready it and then move it again as well. Outstanding card. Hard to go wrong with a Stellarcorn Herder. And traditionally, orange and green would struggle a little bit for card draw. So obviously we see Irelia playing Stellarcorn Herder, but there's often other ways to draw or at least have consistency like Stack Deck in purple. But actually in this color combination, the Stellarcorn Herder is going an awfully long way. And I love the Ruin Runner as well, Alex. The guy playing Best of Lucian in Bologna absolutely cooked me with the Ruin Runner coming off the sideboard in game 2. And I really had to rethink my whole strategy just around this card. I was like, right, I took the Watchers out for game 2. They're coming straight back in. I need something to deal with this Ruin Runner. It is an absolute menace. So maybe the only thing I'm surprised about, there wasn't a second Ruin Runner on the sideboard with this one. Would be really interested to hear the thoughts on the player on if they considered that. Also, not the full playset of Punch First. So not only is it a really awesome legend to see doing so well, but it's also a very fascinating deck list to see some of the choices in it. Really, really cool.
A couple things I want to say. First of all, punch first really messes up sealed a little bit. Its rarity level means that if you're playing against orange, especially when you're running 3 domains, it's like you got to always just respect punch first on pretty much every interaction. That's the only thing about sealed right now that's not great. Punch first is a little too common. In this deck, Lucian and First Mate, would you think, first of all, they're just great cards. These are cards we've talked about in the past, specifically First Mate. I know you love First Mate. But do you think that this ability to kind of ready and re-maneuver the cards, is this a meta call for Draven specifically, so you're not just leaving stranded units?
That's a good question. I think there's definitely an element to that. I think being able to ready units is always going to be powerful in Riftbound, just moving from battlefield to battlefield. But yeah, certainly like Lucian plus First Mate is a very, very interesting combo. Like not necessarily Lucian First Mate, but like those cards against Draven are really good. I also saw some Lucian players using the Gem Jammer, which is a card I revealed, which gives ganking, and Lucian can go from one battlefield to the other. That would leave it stranded. I think First Mate in general is just very good. And Lucian is also, but they become better in a meta where Draven is so prevalent.
Absolutely. We're going long on time, so we'll go through these here quickly. We do have a Deluxe Phil Cheese coming in with Irelia. This is a top 8 phenomenal result here. Any thoughts? Oh, imagine if that Irelia had a signature on it. If only someone could have possibly pulled that. 3 Guardian Angels and 3 Zanyas. I wonder if they're trying to protect their chosen champion. Joe, what do you think about this Irelia deck?
Yeah, it's quite similar to the best of Irelia that I lost to, but Triple Vex is a new addition. I think this is going to be aimed at the Ezreal matchup. Like Alan cooked Irelia all weekend long, I think, in Bologna. So Vex is maybe trying to hedge the bets into Ezreal a little. Triple Boots of Swiftness is the same from the best of Bologna. Heart of Dark Ice is a really cool, interesting card. It's a 3-cost, 1-power gear in green, and you can exert it and give a unit +3 might this turn. 2 Defies, 3 on guards, 3 Defiant Dance. Yeah, this deck doesn't have many units, but it doesn't need many units when you've got Zhonya's Hourglass and the GA, the Guardian Angel, to protect it as well. I think Irelia is my least favorite deck to play against, as people probably recognize when they watch my stream game. It's so difficult to know what to commit to. It's just got a handful of tricks, and it is a very strong deck, that's for sure.
Irelia's on the short list of cards I want to play more. I want to build an Irelia deck. I want to put more reps in with it because I think it's a really fascinating design. Like On Guard stretches a little further because obviously you have a singular unit. Not so fast makes a lot of sense in a deck like this because you're like committing to protecting that Irelia hard bargain, beautiful counter card that actually like was a winner in so many of the tournament games as well, like being able to kind of shut down plays or even disrupt the amount of energy your opponent had going into specific turns. On the sidebar, we do have a little bit of gear hate here. Disarming Rake, which I'll have to tell you, as someone who played a ton of Azir, the amount of gear hate out there didn't feel like it was targeted at the Azir player, but it felt like we were caught in the crosshairs, to say the least. It felt pretty bad, I got to tell you. But any thoughts on the sideboard or, of course, the selection? I have to throw a card out. You talk about cold shot, like Defiant Dance is absolutely ridiculous. Like, is Defiant Dance up there as one of the most broken cards of the set or what?
Definitely. I'm still having flashbacks to my round 2 in Bologna, game 3. Think I've got it all covered, and I get hit by triple Defiant Dance in a single turn. I have never been more disgusted. And it was on a Draven as well, so they gained a point for it just for good measure. Unbelievable card. Really, really strong. And you think Defiant Dance is good, Alex? Imagine a Defiant Dance where Vex is in the combat. Suddenly that is a, what? Does it still cost? Okay, it's still, okay. Vex doesn't work with Defiant Dance, so at least that's something. But it gives a power cost off, right? So Vex would remove the power cost of the Defiant Dance. So there's definitely some synergy there. Unbelievable card. I think Irelia would be pretty good even if the signature spell was slightly worse. But the signature spell definitely just tips this one over the edge of being one of the best decks in the format.
Yeah, absolutely. And those Boots of Swiftness 3 ofs, we absolutely love those, and it makes perfect sense in a deck like this as well. No stranger to being discussed on podcasts is Alan. Alan had a remarkable result in Bologna. It's the best possible result. Won Bologna and did remarkably well, went undefeated day 1. And then, stumbled a little bit here and there. By stumbling, I mean he lost. He went basically undefeated for God knows how long. and then ultimately wasn't able to make into the top 4. But honestly, what an absolutely incredible player. Obviously, incredibly prepared for matchups, very cerebral with the way that they play the game. I love watching Alan. I spent a lot of time watching Alan play this weekend. And the deck is what you expect. It's Ezreal, and as we said last week, so many one-ofs. So many one-ofs. We got Singularity one-ofs, Smokescreen, Morbid Return, Hard Bargain, Frigid Touch, all one-ofs in this deck here. So, and of course, a Thousand Tail Watcher. So very unique design. Be very interested in your thoughts.
I think the second Ezreal Prodigy, I think he made a couple of changes. I'm not 100% sure on what they are, but it's definitely interesting to see the second Ezreal Prodigy. Obviously, if you're playing like a non-Ezreal deck and you're playing Purple Seals, you would play 3 of this card because you always want to draw it once, right? At least. Alan, I believe, just had the 1 Ezreal in the Bologna list. So adding that second one into the deck, like, can be a bit weird if you end up with both in hand, but it means that if your first Ezreal is hit by Falling Star, you've got another that you can play later on. And the Morbid Return, Alex, I think is there to do some like loops with Fizz in the late game, so you don't like deck out, and there's some interesting stuff going on there with the Morbid Return. There's a very specific reason for it, I'm sure. But big shout out to Alan. Like the unbelievable marathon that Bologna was to then go ahead and do it the next week in Vegas is honestly unbelievable. So big respect to him. And also to Prismaticism and Randy, who were 2 players that got the top 8 in Bologna, and I think Randy might have bubbled out and Prismaticism made top 8. So big shout out to all those guys. Like, their consistency is honestly unbelievable and a great sign for the health of the competitive nature of the game.
Top 32, Viktor. Viktor has been a meta call. It's been really interesting to see Viktor performing as well as it did. Obviously, top 4 in Bologna. I loved that deck, and we did an entire podcast on the no unit Viktor. This has units. In fact, it has some absolute beauties. I can't believe Riptide Rex is actually making meta decks right now. What a great card. It's basically a built-in Singularity with a body, right? I think you take that all day. It literally is kind of a Singularity for the most part, except you get a body with it, right? I love Riptide Rex. And listen, I think that this deck is really fascinating because it also has the Singularities. Tons of removal, but it also has the token generation. It has the Imperial Decrees. It has the Pickpocket, which is a great meta call for the Ezreals and all the gear we're seeing. Long story short, a very fascinating deck. Interested in your thoughts.
It's so cheap, Alex. I love it. I think this is going to be one of the most popular decks at the local game stores. Outside of Watcher, everything in this card is peanuts. I think it's just awesome. The Pickpocket, for me, my favorite card of the set. So any deck with 3 Pickpockets, Alex, sign me up. I'm down to play it. Awesome, awesome deck. And definitely one that you need to be very well prepared for, because it will absolutely cook you if you're not expecting it. Zorn Punk, I have to read the card. You may kill a friendly gear as an additional cost to play me. When you play me, if you paid the additional cost, kill a gear. Interesting. So you could kill like one of your gold tokens to pop one of your opponent's gear. I can see why it's only a one-off, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And of the gold tokens obviously being generated by things like Wages of Pain. I was interested to see that Rocket Barrage does make a one-off here. On paper, it doesn't sound great, but it does target gear and units, right? And you can also repeat it too, which can definitely have some versatility there. So maybe we're sleeping on Rocket Barrage. I find that it's fascinating that in the main deck, you are including the salvage for that game 1, considering how often you are seeing gear-based decks. What are your thoughts on including a salvage going into game 1 and then having 2 on the sideboard? Do you feel like having 3, if you're playing yellow or body, or not body, this is order, I should say.
Order.
This is order. Yeah.
I'm so bad with it still. Mind is green.
I said it wrong first. Yeah, we got to practice. I said it wrong first, then you said it more wrong, and then I corrected it. So salvage having 3 of in the deck, 2 on the sideboard, 1 in the main. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it seems about right. Salvage is a really important card to have access to, but yeah, I wouldn't want to play more than 1 in the main deck. I think 1 is already pushing it, right? But you can probably get away with just having 1.
Okay, we're going to continue through here because Joe's internet's turning potato on us here. So we're going to try to get through 2 more decks. We have Master Yi, and we'll close off with an Azir discussion. Master Yi, top 32, very, very, very low play rate compared to other decks. Master Yi was a tournament winner. It was one of the most popular decks in Origins, and now it's completely fallen off. What are your thoughts on Master Yi as a whole, and in particular, this Dazzling Aurora version of Master Yi, which we did see? We had mid-range Yi and we had we had the Dazzling Aurora version. It looks like the Dazzling Aurora one is the one that they turned to on in Vegas.
Yeah, I think Aurora is a really good card. You get Find Your Center by playing green, which is a very reasonable card to help ramp. And also Desert's Call, I think, is a huge addition for Aurora Yi, because it's a 2-drop, which is a spell. So it doesn't make your Aurora worse, but you still actually have curve. And it can also be a 4-drop as well. So I think Desert's Call has probably been quite slept on in Aurora Yi. And now, as soon as I see that card in this deck, I can absolutely see why this had such a good weekend. That is an unbelievably big addition for an Aurora deck to have a curve. I've been saying, like, if Volibear gets a chosen champion that's like a 2-drop or a 4-drop, it will really push that deck, because suddenly you have a way of contesting the board early without disrupting your Aurora. And this Desert's Call does something very similar.
Yeah, because you're able to not just concede the entire beginning of the game. Not even just the beginning. When you're playing Dazzling Aurora, you're often conceding, like if you're playing Misfortune Aurora, you're conceding like the beginning and the mid of the game. Like you're just playing the end, basically. And it's crazy because sometimes you'll be down 6 points and still make a comeback because of the power of Dazzling Aurora, which is probably the reason why you got to run Salvage and you got to run all this gear hate. Thermal Beam being played in a lot of the red decks as well, or the Fury decks, as we should say. On the sideboard, we have the Punch First, we have Sabotage, which is an absolutely remarkable card. Fantastic deck. And I'm glad that Yi had a good performance. I think it's being slept on a bit. And again, with Desert's Call and some intelligent inclusions for Spirit Forge, we're seeing some results. Now, Azir, top 64. Strude was the Bologna best of winner, which was great to see. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this deck is because I actually had an opportunity. I spoke for several minutes with him, and it was a great conversation. I've been maining Azir this set, and I'm like, hey, we talked deck and talked choices and stuff like that. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm not convinced this is actually the correct list, because when I was speaking to him, I believe me and him literally had a conversation about Guardian Angel, because we were discussing about how Guardian Angel is at odds with Azir a little bit because it destroys itself. And as a result, it doesn't trigger for Arise. You're losing that re-equip effect. Hey everyone, it's Editor Alex here. I'm sorry for the jump scare, but I knew that deck looked wrong. I literally watched him play multiple rounds of the tournament and of course spoke to him, as I mentioned in the video, about his card choices and his deck overall. So I knew that the cards that were on the screen didn't quite make sense compared to what I had been seeing and what we spoke about. So anyways, I did go and get the correct deck list. I will be linking that down below as well. I'll link his Twitter as well, where he did kind of discuss it. I think he's planning on making a guide for it too, which is kind of cool. But at the end of the day, guys, I just want to make sure you guys knew that I'm going to be superimposing the correct deck list on the screen so you guys can see it, just in case there's a little bit of a discrepancy between what Joe and I are talking about and what is on the screen, is because you are now going to be seeing the correct deck. And of course, I will have the correct deck linked down below. Thanks, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. With Guardian Angel, it's found that even if you attach it just to a regular Sand Soldier and you put it into a location, sometimes people just let you hold that. They don't want to contest it, not just because of the additional power, or the might, I should say, but because they feel like they're wasting resources on taking out that Sand Soldier, which obviously just comes back to base exhausted. Although it kind of hurts your Arise, and it kind of hurts some of your other game plans, it also does protect, of course, your champion unit as well. But really fascinating choice to see 3 of if a Guardian Angel. Want to get some verification if that's actually what the deck was, because it's literally not what we discussed when I talked to him on the weekend. But I love Azir. This has been my main deck of this set, and it's a relatively fair deck, I think. I think Arise is the only true unfair play that you have. It's the true this is where my value stands. But as I joked about before, you're caught in the crosshair. People are bringing salvages for the Auroras and bringing pickpockets for the
pickpocket.
Pickpocket for the seals and stuff, and they're blowing up your BF sword, they're blowing up your Eye of Herald, BF sword not with the pickpocket, of course, but your gear is getting destroyed. It's you've been caught in the meta crosshairs. You know what I mean, Joe?
Yeah, I think especially the 1-cost gear. My round 3, I was 1-1, very slow start to the day, and I queued into Azir. And if it wasn't for the pickpocket inadvertently hitting their Doran Shield and Eye of Herald, I think I would have lost that one. So I think that's one thing that's really unfortunate for Azir. The meta is a little bit against it, but I think that also means it's one really to keep an eye on moving forwards. I've been really impressed by the deck. I think the Chosen Champion is super duper cool. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the Chosen Champion, Alex, Azir Sovereign, in your experience of this card.
Yeah, of course. So I've played a ton of Azir. So the Sovereign Champion can come out accelerated. So it's a 4/4, can come out accelerated. And it says, when I attack, you may move any number of your token units to this battlefield. This is great. I won so many games because sometimes my opponent's trying to hold to 8 and I'm at 7 or whatever, got to conquer 2. I can send one token, or I can send them all if I want, into one particular location, win that battlefield, and then bring my chosen champion over and just swing them all over. It's like a token ride the wind, basically. It allows you, almost like a mundo. You just make you mundo all your tokens over, and so you're able to win and close out games with it, which I thought was remarkable. When compared to the other version of the chosen champion for green, which is honestly still pretty good, which allows you to basically swap the location of the two with a token. It's a little different. I do prefer this one because it's cheaper. It has less might, of course, 4 versus 6. But I feel like the versatility and the ability to really bring your tokens, which you've built your whole game plan around, I think helps a lot. And the thing with Azir too is you're able to be very aggressive. And even on turn 4, like generally speaking, on turn 4, you want to try to get still activating your token or do your Desert's Calls or whatever, right? Because you can repeat it, get 2 extra tokens on the field of play, both of which will have Weapon Master. At the end of the day, I think Azir has so many ways to win, and it wouldn't surprise me if in a future meta we get another card or 2 that helps this deck out. And if equipment becomes less of a focus, and if seals become less of a focus, it might open up a laneway for Azir to have less of a combative experience going through its matchups, because again, it's like people are sideboarding thermal beams because not necessarily for Azir, but for everything else they're seeing, right? And of course, Azir is part of the equation. Don't get me wrong. You have your thermal beam, so you can deal with stuff like this, right? That's why it's in your sideboard. But at the same time, it did feel like as an Azir player, you're taking quite a bit of incidental meta damage.
Yeah, I really love the Chosen Champion. Like the fact that it's also a 4/4 with no power cost if you don't want to, right? You can just put it at your base, but then the explosive nature of it with the accelerate and the fact you can move the Sand Soldiers over, like it's such a key part of your game plan, and having a Chosen Champion, which is just something you always want to play, goes such a long way. I definitely agree. Like I think in a different meta, this one has a lot of potential. Maybe if you get some sort of card draw item as well, that would help it out quite a bit. Maybe the card draw is like one thing that it's lacking a little bit of, but it's definitely a very, very awesome deck, and one I want to experiment with myself. Although I don't want to have the experience of having my Eye of the Herald pickpocketed. That sounds quite miserable.
Yeah, I did have my BF Sword Akshan, which was a little frustrating too, because I didn't have much gear removal. It was on my sideboard in salvages. I didn't have it in my main, which thinking back, I think I still would have wanted to have maybe one salvage in my main deck for that game 1. But you talk about card draw. Yeah, it definitely struggles with natural card draw. You do have disciplines, which provide you with card draw. You do have the Sacred Shears, which I run 3 of. This particular deck's running 2 of. With Sacred Shears, you can combo that with Hidden Blade. You can combo that with Death Grip and generate some additional draws. And I really like putting the Sacred Shears on the forward-facing tokens. That if they're holding battlefields, yeah, you can take this, but I'm drawing because you take this. It's almost like a reversed Draven. So being able to play those Sacred Shears, yes, it's expensive, 2 mana, and of course a power, but you can still do that if you're going second turn 1. Does it set you back? Of course it does. Would you rather play Brutalizer, or would you rather play Eye of the Herald turn 1? Of course you'd rather do that, right? But if given the opportunity, you can also do this. So I did like Sacred Shears, and of course, if they don't have the gear hate, that tends to stick around, and you get a lot of recurring value, a lot of recurring draws, which I thought was good. And another low-key winner, by the way, is Guards. Guards allows you to basically, even if like you're holding it, it's a nice way to like conquer a battlefield with like your all your might, and then you can just like sprint a soldier out to clean up the last one if you need to. So I was able to win a game like that as well. Joe, I've been spending so much time talking this weekend and shouting over all the noise. My voice is literally, I think if you listen from the beginning to the end, you can hear my voice just completely disintegrating. I don't think I can talk anymore. So you know what, Joe? I'm going to leave it to you to close out the show, because I don't think I can say another word.
All right. Well, this has been the Rift podcast with myself, Joe Curley, and my good friend, Alex Coccia. Thank you so much for watching. Maybe you should consider subscribing and giving the podcast a like. Alex stayed up all night for this, kind of. He flew off the plane, He went to work and he still did the podcast. If that's not worth a like, I don't know what is. But we really appreciate all you guys. Looking forward to seeing you next week. And good luck at your Riftbound skirmishes, because I believe they start soon. Bye now.